Our panel today is incredible. I'm curious from the crowd, who here has at one point in your life made a separate meal for everyone in your household? Or here's a better question. Who here has made a meal for someone in your family, sure would be a winner, and had them push it away, being like, I'm not eating this? Has that ever happened to anybody here? Laura says that's her. Yeah, okay, so it's happened to everybody. I've had it happen. I tried crispy fish sticks, which were amazing, and my son wouldn't eat them. So every age presents a challenge at the dinner table, from basically when you start introducing food until that person is no longer living. Everyone has their own selectivity, some more than others. So selective eaters can make our intentions for the little ones go out the window. It can be a frustrating experience. And so we've pulled together a panel of all-stars. Now, I know a lot of them either through social media or in real life. So we have Erin Sinza, who offered an amazing tip to avoid tantrums at the table. And I'm just going to share it now because it was so good, which was to have a big clock that your child understands and tell them how much time you're spending before the dinner, so that they get that focused time before you sit down to the table. So I don't know if I just ruined everything she was going to tell me, but that changed everything in my house. Michael Tannenbaum, who's a father of two, brilliant, great information to share. Christine Flynn, those of you who've done the CNE program may recognize her. She does the knife skills course. She's a good friend of mine. She has twin girls that were born just about a month before Finn, so we've been on this journey together. Cindy Spratt was one of the very first grads of the Culinary Nutrition Expert program and has been focusing on teaching kids. And Michelle Fox, who has a house full of teenagers and is doing some great work online. And I'm going to stop talking because they can best represent themselves, let's be honest. So welcome, everybody. Let's make sure we got everybody's cameras on, everybody working. Just looking for, there's Christine in a homemade shirt. Unbelievable. But you probably made that this morning, I'll bet, too.
Oh, you know me.
Exactly. Welcome, everybody. So let's start with everyone can just give a brief introduction of who you are, how many mouths you're feeding, and where you're based. So we'll start with you, Erin. You're still muted. Okay, we're going to come back to Erin. And we'll start with you, Michael, because you're unmuted.
Thank you, Megan. It's good to see you. I am, as she said, Michael Tannenbaum. I have a wife and two boys, ages 8 and 10, which is a very exciting time because it straddles both questions you asked about ages, because it changes. I have a website. Well, first of all, I'm based in Los Angeles, and I took the culinary nutrition course in 2016, completely upended my knowledge. It added so much to my life. I love it so much. And I run a website called Consciously Kosher, in addition to being a freelance food and nutrition writer. And the point of Consciously Kosher in my community is to teach people, to transform people's lives by teaching them how to make healthier choices about what they eat and how they live. Easier said than done. And a lot of the source material comes out of the experiments I do in my own family. This is the live experimental material. The successes and the challenges all make it into the blog posts and the writing and the workshops. So that's what I do. It's just teaching people how to eat cleaner food and how to manage all that with the kids.
Fantastic. Thank you, Michael. And you do it so eloquently. Erin, you ready?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I'm Erin Isunza. My business is Family Recipe, and my focus is teaching families how to meal plan, how to cook, how to make the whole process family friendly. And that starts with the individual person. So even if your family is 2 adults, how to make that achievable for you. And once kids start to work into the picture, how to gradually incorporate them, because we can't establish good habits with our kids until they're established with ourselves. So that's my focus is accessibility, making healthy eating accessible to everyone.
Wonderful. And Michelle.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me here. I have sincerely been so inspired by all of the panels today. So yes, I'm Michelle Fox, culinary nutritionist. My favorite title of all of them. The other titles are mom, wife, yogi, spiritual healer. I help busy professionals learn how to get more nutrition in their bodies and have more fun in the kitchen. And so with this panel, I believe I was brought here. Megan just said I have a lot of teenagers. It feels like I have a ton of teenagers in the house. I have a 14-year-old daughter. My husband also has a 14-year-old daughter. Side note, that's actually how we met, when they were in second grade. And then my husband also has a 10-year-old son. And so I am here to share some of my tips, but also to learn. I've got my pen and I'm ready to take some notes from my fellow panelists as well. So thank you.
Thank you. And Cindy?
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for having me as well. Super stoked to be here with you all. Excited to learn as well from everybody else here. I'm a holistic nutritionist, CNE grad from a while back. I also did some training in eating psychology and eating disorder recovery. So I work with kids by running some cooking classes, which I've been doing for actually a long time. Really so fun. We're having a great time together. And then I also have a one-on-one practice. So I work with moms and families. I have an active blog as well and creating recipes and all that kind of stuff, sharing info as much as I can. And really weaving together that piece of eating psychology and intuitive eating and supporting the body in a really loving way as well. That's really an important part of what I do as well.
Thank you. And Christine, and I forgot to mention earlier, but this is Christine's new book that just came out. It's amazing. And I'm like packing up my house because I move on Thursday. I didn't have enough to do this week. So I'm like, let's move. But I made sure this didn't get packed away. It's a fantastic book. So welcome, Christine.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me. My name is Christine Flynn, and I'm also a graduate of the CNE program from quite a while back. But I'm also a classically trained chef. I've worked all over the world. I'm currently executive chef and partner at IQ Food Co. in Toronto, which is, a plant-forward, fast casual restaurant group. And as Megan mentioned, I have 2 daughters who both just turned 4. And I also have a book, and I have another book in editing, and I'm actually just starting my 3rd, which is all on pantry staples, which I'm really excited about because I love to cook, and I love to cook with my daughters.
How do you do something with your life?
I know.
It's unbelievable. I would like to sort of throw this question out there to get the conversation going, because we are focusing on kids or selective eaters. But what are some of the non-negotiable mealtime rules in your household? Michael, why don't you start us off?
Oh boy. The biggest one for us, and this came out of, I worked in the marketing agency world for many years, and there were interruptions constantly. Megan did that too many years ago. It never ended. So when I came to this more holistic way of eating, I began to understand that you have to cut off all the interruptions. And this is as true for the parents as it is for the kids. And our number one non-negotiable is we don't allow phones at mealtime. We don't allow devices. I've seen that in homes. I've had guests over where they're constantly down and up and down and up the whole time with the phone. Yeah, we don't do that. And I really understood this on Friday nights and Saturdays for us. It's Sabbath, and we don't even have access to these devices. They're off totally. And I started to realize, this should be all week during meal times. So we enforce that very tightly. It's not 100%, but it's pretty close. And we talk about food in our day and whatever else. Usually it's about food.
Mm-hmm. And Erin, you've got younger ones you're working with. So what are the rules at your dinner table?
So my kids are almost 4 and 6. And they've morphed a lot as developmental stages change. But the one that is consistent is that we always eat at the table. and again, no devices. One that has kind of come and gone is toys at the table. Now it's a hard rule that there's no toys. Earlier on, that's how we got my youngest to sit at the table, was to bring one toy and like pretend to feed his toy. But at this point, it's a distraction, so no toys.
And what about you, Christine? Because I feel like, I mean, I see your kids eating like naked on the counter. So do you have like sort of more casual eating when they're hungry, or do you have set meal times in your home?
You know, I got a preview of the questions, and I knew that I was going to be an outlier on a lot of them, but I'm an independent mom, just to kind of put that out there. So to sort of contextualize how we eat, like I also have to fit in working full time, caring for my daughters, cleaning the house, you know, all of these many things. So, you know, for me, the reality of sitting, I don't even own a table, but we do have a really nice counter. So we do typically try and eat at the counter. We eat with real silverware. We use real napkins. You know, we drink real drinks. I don't know if that's like a, you know, I don't know. Like we always have like fizzy water, and we do talk. But in terms of there being like hard and fast rules or like set meal times, that's never really been my thing. I'm a little more, can I call it intuitive, or am I just being disorganized? I don't know. But hard and fast rules, I don't have them because my daughters are always changing and my schedule is nuts. So as long as we're getting, you know, my goal every day is like one really good meal, and everything outside of that is cool because I just have to get it done.
Are your kids, are they selective?
So I would say not typically, and we can maybe talk about some of the ways that I do that more, but in terms of developing their palates, because I'm a cook from a very early age, it was very important to me to expose them, and I'm talking like 4 months, 6 months, to expose them to a variety of flavors. I wasn't like handing them a whole turkey leg at 4 months, but I was definitely giving them green juice, bitter foods, sauerkraut, tin fish juice, all that good stuff from a very early age to make sure that those foods were normalized from the get-go. And it wasn't going to be a thing where I was going to try and introduce it later on, because I don't have the energy to do that.
Right. I think that normalized tin fish juice is like, that's a different level.
Yeah. Well, I really, you know, it's a long con, but it's made my life much easier now.
Michelle, so having 10 and 2 14-year-olds, and then I imagine also friends, like when you have older kids, I see one walking by in the shadows behind you. How do you manage sort of the meal time when they're busy and coming and going, or maybe are trying to assert there's the toddler independence and there's the teenage independence. How do you negotiate that or navigate that?
Yeah, it's so funny. As soon as you asked the question originally a few minutes ago, I just felt like the wind from my teenager's eyes from the eye rolls, because there are so many non-negotiables in our house when it comes to health and nutrition. And at the same time, I still have to repeat myself every single day. And so that's when I get the eye rolls like, yes, Mom, I know I have to grab the water bottle before we leave the house. Yes, I know I can't bring my phone to the table. Yes, I know dinner's at 6:30. So I think, if anything, just being consistent and being on the same page with my husband has helped tremendously. We've been together a little over 6 years, and those rules started pretty much at day one. And so just being consistent, because kids, I like to say, especially my 14-year-olds, they are really good at being 14, which means really good at pushing boundaries. And so Steve and I just stay very consistent throughout. That's how we choose to do it.
Do your kids live with you? All of your kids live, I don't know if this is too personal a question, but I'm going to ask, because you're talking about consistency and you have a blended family. Do they all live with you full time, or how do you navigate if they're with their other parents and those rules don't apply?
Yeah, awesome question. And I am definitely an open book, because I get so excited about being a blended family and also just sharing with other blended families. So one, I have compassion for the children and for us, knowing that Friday is typically our passing off day, I guess you could say. So compassion that, there are different rules in the other homes. And so I give them time to kind of reorient and come back to our rules, and then know that when they slip up, okay, we all slip up, we're human, but then we're going to come back and again stay consistent. But yes, I have my daughter every other week, and we switch off on Fridays. And then we have my bonus kiddos every other weekend because they live pretty far, but then they're also with us for most of the summers. So the summers are really the time that we get to practice, you could say, being really consistent, just because there's so much happening during our summers.
Right. And Cindy, how does it work in your home around mealtime?
Yeah, I have a 13-year-old son. There's just 3 of us here. And I love that idea that Michelle was talking about with regards to consistency. I feel like there aren't really hard and fast rules in my home either, but we consistently sit at the table together. We pretty well have dinner at 6 o'clock. My son now helps me with dinner. He helps putting the plates and the food on the table. And then one thing that we've done, which is not really, I wouldn't call it a rule, is just something that how my husband and I were both raised, is we sit down and wait until everybody's ready to eat. And that has it's interesting because we have friends over, aside from COVID, we have friends over for meals regularly. It's something we love to do. And it's kind of our thing. And some of our friends sit down, they start eating, and they're like, oh yeah, right, we forgot we do that in your home. And it's never been something, well, this is how we work. It's just been something that we've established, and through to the end of the meal, we wait. Nobody kind of gets up until we're done. And when everybody's finished eating, then we pick up our plates and we clear the table. And that's just our routine that we've established, which I love, and it's just become our absolute normal. Yeah.
I love that tip. And we, in my home, because we come home, everyone knows who my husband is. So Josh and I, we work a lot. We come home, we take turns making dinner. And so by the time we get to the table, and I'm sure everyone experiences this, it's sort of like okay, we have a moment. And we used to hold hands and do an when Finn was little. And now he hates it. And so instead, but because we like to start eating at the same time, we have to do a poo. It's like a poo. It's the only way we can get him to just have a moment where he'll just calm down a little bit, to be a little bit less of a full expression of a 4-year-old. I'm curious, since this is culinary nutrition, if you have conversations about health food or the health of foods with your kids, because it's a little bit controversial, because you obviously don't want to create stigma, and we don't want to go bad food, good food, or junk food, health food. But how do you communicate and educate around foods that are beneficial or not? Does someone want to volunteer to go first? Maybe Erin? Oh.
Sure, I'll go first. So this is something that we're very mindful of in our house. We have disordered eating runs deep on both sides of our families, and pretty severely with my husband. And so because of that, we tread very lightly with how we approach healthy eating. And since my oldest was born, my husband has gone through a major transformation with his health, which he was very, very overweight. And so, of course, that brought about a lot of questions from our oldest, as he noticed things were different about how his dad was eating, and lifestyle patterns were suddenly different. And maybe there were fast food things that were allowed before that we don't do anymore. And so it's been such a learning process. And I would say that we're still very much in that, especially because our oldest is just he's very literal. And so if we say something is bad, it is bad forever, and anyone who touches it or does that is bad too. So it's a lot of, we talk about the purpose of foods, what the foods do in our body. We talk about, we garden, and so we talk a lot about oh, look how colorful this is. Do you know what this color means as far as what that does in your body? And so that's how we bring awareness to the health side of it without necessarily shaming, foods that don't necessarily have that. They're exposed to a lot of things that we don't serve at home, at preschool, like things that they have for snack. And we've kind of just approached it as we control what we do at home. And we talk about the value of what we do at home. And it's coming up a lot lately of, we'll pick them up from school and they're like hangry. And we talk about why that's happening. It's because they're getting crackers and fruit for snack. And we talk about like, that gives you energy, but it's really fast energy. So we're going to eat this so that it gives you slow energy that's going to last a long time. And that seems to really, really click. And so far it hasn't really demonized anything as far as I can tell.
Michael, what about you?
We have, that was really fascinating, by the way, Erin. We have discussions all the time about food, and this started probably about 7 years ago when my kids were very, very young. But I take them to farmers market every week. There's a great local farmers market here. So the conversation from years has revolved around what are the varieties that are available, what's the seasonality. So they're asking these questions. They go to school and they have these, they introduce stuff to their friends, which always creates more conversation. So I feel that at this point, especially my older one, they tend to lead off with that. And what happens is that because we're always talking about it, I've now gotten to the point where I let them, I'm starting to trust that they are confident enough to make their own decisions at this point. This is that turning point. I don't know what happens when they become teenagers, as some of you have. But I feel like I've given them what I can give them. We talk about it constantly. We have a friend around the corner who composts, who just, even in the backyard of his apartment, he has the entire backyard is now agriculture. We go to farms a lot. Megan sees, you probably see that with the articles I write. So they're very exposed to it. And there's not much more you can do, I suppose, except just let them, I'm empowering them now. I'm at the point where I want them to take the lead on this. And what's funny, for example, my 8-year-old, speaking of hangry, Erin, my 8-year-old is the king of hangry. He comes home from school at 4:30. He wants dinner. Dinner's not ready yet, clearly. But I've thrown him a bone. A fish bone. I've thought him he has his Wild Planet sardines he gets to eat, which he knows what's in them. They're good for calcium. They're good with omega-3 fatty acids, etc. And that holds him until then he has to have vegetables later on. So he's not going to have the main course at 6 or 7 o'clock. So I would like him to have a meal completely with us, but it's not going to happen. So instead of finding salty snacks, he has something that really holds him for a few hours. I mean, it would hold anybody.
Yeah, that's a great tip too. And I'd read an article once about like serving your kids dinner at 3:30, but I'm like, who is capable of organizing that? And similar to you, like when my son comes home hangry from school and we give him good food, but he burns through everything. It's like, here, have some olives. And if he's not hungry enough for the olives, he'll wait for dinner. Christine, I'm curious your take on this. I know you have close relationships with a lot of food people.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, as you say, I was also like really moved by the disordered eating. So just to touch on that, so when I was a kid, my parents put me on my first diet when I was 10 years old, which I have actually probably never recovered from. And I'll never remember I'll never forget the moment I was watching Blossom. I was just trying to live my best 10-year-old life. And my dad came and sat down, blocked the screen. So I could not watch Blossom, which was very upsetting at the time. And my parents explained to me that I was too heavy and that I needed to go on a diet. And this was like early 90s. So I began to have separate meals from my siblings. I got skim milk while my brothers had regular milk. My pitcher was demarcated, so I was only allowed this one special milk. My yogurt was low fat, comments were made around food. And it was just a terrible way to do it. So that's another thing that in my household, I'm very careful not to, like you say, demonize foods. I'm not here to say that one food is healthy and another food is not healthy. I recognize that some foods are more nourishing. And my whole strategy is to create a lot of joy around food and a lot of engagement and to present options which are delicious and nutrient dense and occasionally like whimsical and fun. Like, I do not think that there's anything wrong with a slice of well-made cake. I love cake. So I really try with my daughters to make the process fun, make the options good, and to never, sort of put down a different food. As you say, maybe explain some of the chemistry in your body. We're not at that stage, therefore, yet. That's something that we'll have a conversation later on. But at this point, like, they're so young that I just want them to love food and to explore it and to feel confident about eating. And that's my whole strategy.
That's really interesting. And I know, like, we've had a lot of culinary nutrition experts come into it because of histories of disordered eating and wanted to just understand what food really is. And that's why I've always stayed far away from anything relating to calorie counts and fat grams and all that stuff, because it's toxic and it's not healthy either. Like, they don't equate to the same thing. I'm curious from you, Michelle, sort of, touching on what Christine talked about with the disordered eating and how, 10, 12, 14, like, it's such an impressionable period. What kind of relationship with food are you aiming to model for your children?
I love that you use that word, model, because as Erin was talking and Michael was talking and Christine was talking, I'm like, I think we're all kind of alluding to the same thing, which is that the children are watching us. Like, even when we don't think they are, they're watching us. And so similarly, I do my best to talk about why we're eating the healthy food as opposed to making it a punishment. And conversely, looking at, rewards for fun activities versus, the cake and the ice cream. So yeah, being a role model. And there was one more thing. Maybe, would you mind asking me that question again, Megan? Because there was one more thing I wanted to add.
Yeah, it was just like trying to avoid going down that route of disordered eating and model a positive relationship with food. Oh, she got it.
Yes. Thank you. Because in the converse side, I was going to say, being the role model, like, knowing that my children are watching me, I always have, the fresh fruits and the nuts out so they can always just easily grab it. But also, I noticed that maybe 3-4 years ago, before taking the culinary nutrition program, I was guilty of hiding, mommy snacks in the back of my car because I didn't want to share. And I also didn't think they were all that healthy. But I noticed, well, even if they maybe don't physically know that I'm doing that, I think there's an energetic around that. And I never want my children to feel like they have to hide food, whether it's for a lack or because they feel embarrassed or ashamed. Like, similar to what Christina's saying, I want joy, and I just want them to be proud of their choices and proud of who they are as people. And 14-year-old girls, I mean, it's tough. There's all these messages out there in the media, and the body image is just, it's tough. We have frequent conversations about taking care of our bodies versus what our bodies are looking like. So that's what I have to share about being a model.
That's great. That's really valuable insights. And, the part about how you were hiding snacks, and even if they knew or they didn't know, it was behavior you would never want your child to model. If you want a snack, have a snack. If you want a treat, have a treat. Enjoy it, but not to do it like in the shroud of like you're doing something wrong. Cindy, how do you sort of manage that modeling with your son? And, it's different with COVID, but if he's on, I don't know if he's on like sports teams or, hanging out with his friends and they're all eating or doing something that maybe doesn't align with how you prefer him eating or the choices.
Yeah, that's been a big one in the last few years, because when he was younger, it was so much easier to just, he ate what I put out. So, and the rhythm that was established was really coming from me, which is important when they're little because they don't really have the ability to self-regulate with food yet. So, it's you as the mom, as the parent for a long time. And then they hit adolescence and it's this practice of letting go a little bit because they're looking for more independence and autonomy. So it's been a tricky time because definitely he wants to explore the foods that we haven't, really had in our home. And really everything is a conversation. I think we're all talking about the same thing there. So I too had a really disordered past with food, which is why I'm in the area that I'm in with working one-on-one with my clients. And we talk about that all the time. Just the work that I've done, that I do, what I promote, my own history with food. Now that he's 13, he's ready for all the information and all the real conversations. So you know what, when he goes out to something where I know there's going to be a whole bunch of food that, I don't really want him eating, it's up to him. And I have to let go and I have to step back because he's at that age where he needs to be able to move forward into the world on his own. And he'll make mistakes, and the mistakes are important. And at the end of the day, he still comes home to, our kitchen, which is full of amazing food. But the balance of letting go is really important, because we are all dealing with a lot of histories of disordered eating or dysfunctional eating. It's important to not be restrictive and to hold on to too much control with our kids. We have to loosen the reins a little bit, especially as they move into that adolescent world. We just have to, and it's not comfortable, but they need to be able to explore on their own.
Yeah. I don't ever want to have to let go of the reins.
I know.
He's only 4, and I'm like, nope, keeping this one closed. We have a question from Wendy, who's watching live. I have 2 grandsons who are 4 and 6 and are extremely picky and eat very limited diet as a result. Any suggestions how to deal with these types of selective eaters? And I changed her word. She said picky eaters. I like selective. I think what can happen is that, and I know this isn't about me and I'm not supposed to be talking, but sometimes that the kids only want to eat noodles and cheese. And so the parents will make noodles and cheese just because for that one meal it's easier, and then they just keep doing it. And that can, the habits can actually be fostered to make a picky eater pickier. Christine, take over because I'm not supposed to be talking.
Oh, okay, so this is one of my favorites because, again, my kids do eat a pretty diverse range of foods. But if you ask my kids what they eat, they would tell you they eat pizza and tacos every day. So figure out what that thing is that those kids like and make something, using minimally processed ingredients and just make it the same shape. Especially at that age, I'll make pizza for the girls, but it's really like a chickpea crust. There's goat cheese and beets on it. And sometimes the girls will chirp me because there's no pepperoni, but they think it's a pizza or they think it's a taco. And all you have to, not all you have to do, that's being reductive, I apologize. The best way to kind of get them to explore new foods is by having a familiar food, a familiar shape, a familiar idea as your gateway food. And that way you sneak in your greens or you sneak in maybe a vegetable. You can obviously puree stuff and blend it in if you have the time. But in general, finding the foods that they love and figuring out how to make them out of other better ingredients is the best way to do it, I think.
Michael?
Well, first of all, I love that because that you pretty much said everything I wanted to say about that, because I think that is the strategy. It's to create find the gateway foods to create a, I can't even think of the word I wanted right now, create a pathway to more diversity. Now, I actually brought these because I was thinking about this earlier. You think of pasta. My 8-year-old, when he was younger, he would only eat pasta. It was like that, similar to what you guys were talking about, pizza and tacos. So we discovered this, right? For the panelists, you all know this, but not everyone knows all these. We discovered this.
So that was a chickpea pasta, a cassava pasta, in case anyone can't see the label.
And this is einkorn. This is I'm not good with the backwardsness of the screen here, of the camera.
Heritage
this is
wheat.
Right, which is wheat, and it tastes completely different, and it's still wheat, etc. And we have just black bean pasta, What I love is that my son went from being a pastaholic, straight up like white, bleached, whatever, to his favorite pasta is now red lentil pasta. And that's like mostly what he'll eat. And the point is that that was the gateway. We did it with so many other foods. We did it with cheeses too. Now we will occasionally have cheese, and he'll eat a sheep feta, which is a really high quality sheep feta. We don't eat the other because it's very inflammatory. So I think that's the strategy. What Christine said really is the strategy that's worked for us. It works for pizza dough. We use cauliflower for that sometimes. And first the kids are like, oh, it tastes a little different. And it's a little different. And by 6 months into it, they're accepting of it. And you realize they've forgotten what the original is. My kids forgot what the store-bought almond milk tastes like when we started making our own. And they won't even drink dairy milk anymore, for example, because you lose the taste. But it's a slow progression. It's saying there's all this variety out there. And I mean, why isn't everyone doing this? It's not even a matter of culinary nutrition experts. It's just like there's so much variety on the planet. Why aren't we using it?
And Erin, what about you? How do you manage the selectivity in your house, or what tips would you give?
So a couple different things. One, what really helped with our first, because we started him out eating everything and we thought, oh great, we have this amazing eater. And then he became a toddler and had opinions, and that all changed. But so one major thing that helped is shifting the time of day that we served things, because by the end of the day, like our dinners were usually where we were serving the most veggies and things like that. And by the end of the day, like he's done, and he doesn't have, like the mental capacity for new things. He was just far less accepting of that. And so I started serving him carrots at breakfast, and carrots are the one vegetable that he will consistently eat today. So, 3 or 4 years in the making. So just switching things up. And then what we've recognized with our second is similarly with the timing, and also, as others have mentioned, the kind of repetition, the habits that they get in. With our youngest, his routine is that he comes to the table and he automatically just has to find something to say that he doesn't like. And so it's usually something on his plate. We always include at least one food that our kids will like. But like before he even gets there, he's like, I don't want. And a lot of the time he'll stop right there. He'll look at his plate and be like, oh, and then like see the thing that he likes and okay, let's eat. But it's like he just has to get it out of his system, because that's like how he's wired. And so we just stopped responding. Like we let him complain. We stopped trying to convince him that his complaint, it should be something else, or convince him why he should eat the food. We just kind of let him like, oh, you don't want that right now. Okay, don't eat that. And then we go about what we're doing. And almost always he at least picks at it and at least takes a taste.
Do any of you include your kids in like the meal planning or prepping process? Do you give them jobs? Cindy?
Yeah, I always have. And now it's different because he's a little bit older, but when he was younger, we used to have an actual menu board, which I do with so many of my clients, and have like themed weeknights, which is always the hardest for parents, Monday to Friday themes. So let's say Monday was taco night, Tuesday was pasta night, Wednesday was fish, and Thursday, et cetera, et cetera. And then we'd fill in what was happening for the week. So if on Saturday, he would go to the board when he's old enough to write in what we were having. Oh, what did we have last week? Let's try something different. And then, so now it's a little bit different. That's more of a younger years kind of tactic. And now he's on food prep a couple of nights a week. So he helps me figure out what we're making, and he's right there in the kitchen, chopping and putting in his own spin on things, which he really wants to do. And I think that again, with that bit of stepping back when they're a little bit older is really important, because he just wants that control. So I'm hoping one day he'll be doing full meals. I think it's probably right around the corner. But involving them, absolutely. And involving them when they're picky eaters is huge as well. I've been working a little bit with some kids on the spectrum, just one-on-one, and I we're noticing, me and the parents are noticing that if the kids are just in the kitchen with their hands on some of the foods, or they're, even if they're touching them and they're moving them around, or they're putting them in bowls or taking them out of bowls or putting them in the mixer, it's that connection with the food is just so important. And the amount of times that I've seen a kid who wouldn't otherwise have put something in their mouth, just put it in their mouth because they're in the kitchen, so many times. So just like having them being involved is such a key piece, I believe, to picky eaters, but also just for all kids, so that that's a regular process for them, and that they grow up to be familiar with good eating.
Christine, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, it takes a little bit of extra work to cook with your children, but I love it. And I'm actually writing a little article about this for a publication in the States, because, you know, a lot of people, when you think about preparing food, you don't necessarily maybe think about all the skills that you're teaching your child at that time, but it's an incredible way for children to learn math, basic reading, teamwork, patience, as well as, you know, the flavors and what good food looks like. You know, you talk about, you know, putting your hands in the bowls and mixing things. And if you show a kid a bowl of white sugar, like, it actually doesn't look that appealing. So like getting your children to understand the ingredients from the ground up, and to look at them, to sort of touch them, feel them, have that sensory play that everyone is so into right now. All you have to do is cook something or assemble something. Like chia pudding is an excellent recipe to make with children, because you can't over mix a chia pudding, which is critical if you're handing a toddler a whisk. But I just think that involving your children in the process is so great from the perspective of getting them to engage with the food and eat it, but also for all of those other skills that happen in cooking. It's a beautiful way to hang out with your kids.
That's great. I love that. And good tip on the chia pudding. I cook with my son a lot, but cooking with my son, I now think about all the times I ate food where someone said, oh, my toddler helped me make it. And I'm a germaphobe, and like, I will never eat food that a toddler helped cook. It's like, there's for sure just stuff in there. Michelle, how does it work with having older kids?
Yeah, so I'm sorry I don't have any help or advice for the grandma with the original question, because when my daughter was younger, I did have her full time, and she ate whatever I had to serve, and if she didn't like it, she just didn't eat it. And I definitely respect that there's different opinions and feelings about that, but that's what I did, and it turns out she is still eating amazing vegetables today. But with our family, since the 10-year-old now, he actually loves to cook. His specialty is special juices that he likes to juice in the juicer. And it's really cute. He has like a 5-star rating that he has us rate him, but it's a whole nother story. But he's getting more comfortable in the kitchen, and the 14-year-old daughters, they're very comfortable in the kitchen. And so our rule is that when you see on the board, I'm looking up like I'm looking at it, but we have a family wall. So I've got our weekly meal plan on one side, and then we have everybody's contributions on the other. And the contributions can be anything from, you know, meal prep to bringing the groceries in to, you know, dishes to setting the table. We always have a child set the table before dinner. All that to say, when they see the meal plan, if they, you know, look there and they're like, oh, I'm not going to love that. Well, awesome. They have the opportunity to fix their own side dish. And the rule is pretty much, as long as you're not getting in anybody's way, you are welcome to make that side dish that has the veggies in it to go along with the dinner that we're having.
Thank you. I just looked at the time. I lost track of time. We're done here. It's over, and I want to respect all of your time. Maybe in the chat, you all can just throw up a comment of like your best takeaway, what you loved, what you learned. I want to thank all of our panelists. And again, I feel like every panel we've had today could be its own full day event that we can talk about, you know, the picky eaters. We can talk about toddlers. We can talk about teens. We can talk about healthy relationships with food. Like, they can all be such massive topics, and you're all brilliant. So thank you all for bringing your wisdom to this panel and being part of the event today. And thank you. I'm going to say goodbye. You can go. I'm going to hit record and record. Healthy eating. Our final panel of the day, panel 4, one meal for all, getting little ones on board and the selective older ones.